Hi, Kris Vallotton here. I hope you're having a great week. I know if you're in Texas, you're in some kind of a snowstorm, but the weather here is nice and sunny. That's why I thought I'd bring my sunny shirt today. It's like, woo, woo. Anyway, yes, so I hope you're having a good week. I wanted to talk to you today about actually who are you surrounding yourself with, and I think we entitled this something like ditching fools or something. And people write all the time like, you're not supposed to call anyone a fool. I didn't call anyone a fool. I'm just quoting Proverbs that says if you hang around with a fool, you'll be foolish. So Proverbs is full of talking about what it looks like to be a fool. I'm certainly not calling anyone a fool, but if the shoe fits, well, I shouldn't have said that either. So what I'd like to do is take you to Isaiah chapter 6, and this is such a powerful a verse. It says, in the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah is saying, I saw the Lord lofty and exalted with his train that filled his temple. And he goes on to say that he had this encounter with the Lord. Verse 5, then he says he's seeing this, like the glory of the Lord, that he sees cherubim and these angels flying over saying, holy, holy is the Lord, the whole earth is full of his glory. It says the foundations of the threshold trembled when the angels were flying and yelling things. And then Isaiah says, woe is me, for I am ruined because I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. And then one of the cherubim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. And he touched my mouth with it, and he said, behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. And then I heard a voice saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me. This is so powerful in so many ways, but I want to talk a little bit about just the practical element of Isaiah's revelation. He sees the Lord in his glory. And there's something about this contrast between the beauty, holiness, and glory of the Lord. The angels are they're shouting, holy, holy is the Lord. And I've heard this idea that, it sounds like the angels just repeating themselves, but I think the angels are flying around God, and every time they see a different perspective of God, they see him from the front, from the side, from the top, they go, holy, oh holy, oh holy. And there's this revelation that the holiness of God is so deeply ingrained in the Godhead himself. Like God is always good. There's no shifting shadow. He's the light of the world. He's the salt of the earth. And he's just like, there's nothing evil in God whatsoever. There's not even a shadow of evil in God. And when Isaiah has this vision, he says, oh my gosh, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips. And I was thinking about this whole revelation of when you see God the way he is, you often see you the way you are. But when you don't see God the way he is, you often see yourself and the people around you differently. What I'm getting at is, 1 John says, when we see him, we'll be like him, for we'll see him just as he is. When we see God, we'll be like him. When we see God, we'll be like him because we're made in his image and likeness. But something happens when we're in an atmosphere that doesn't actually see God, that doesn't actually have, what am I trying to say? A connection to the greatness and the holiness of God. We begin to get connected only to humanity. And the first thing that happens in Isaiah's life is when he sees God the way God is, holy, righteous, glory. The angels are shouting glory, holy, amazing, all of these words. And Isaiah is seeing this revelation of the holiness of God. He immediately realizes that he is a man that is a man of unclean lips. Like he is a sinner. And then he says, and I live among other people who have unclean lips. And there's this thing about, I think it's called relative righteousness. It's like, I can feel good about myself because I live with other people who have the same faults. And I want to talk about that today. There's so much amazing stuff in this passage, but I want to talk about the fact that we often live our lives down to the level of the people we hang around with. And we often invite people in our lives that have the same issues we have. Isaiah's like, I'm a man who doesn't have clean lips. Like, I don't watch my speech and actually hang around people who have the same issue. And it's like you're having a problem with porn, and instead of hanging around with people that have actually beat porn and actually live in holiness, it's just so much easier to hang out with people that have the same problem. And it's like, I feel better about myself because we all have this problem. And I want to tell you, when I wrote the book, Moral Revolution, I was thinking about this whole deal of peer pressure and how when you're in high school or even in college, it's like people don't like virgins because it makes them realize that somebody actually can beat the system. Somebody can actually rise above the pressure to give away their virginity, before marriage. That somebody actually has the strength to rise above the cesspool of impurity and immorality and all this crap that's going on, and can rise to the call. And nobody, what I've noticed when I wrote the book, Moral Revolution, I was thinking about this whole idea that virgins are never popular, because when somebody breaks out of the crowd, like crowds thrive on, we all have issues. But when someone breaks out of the crowd, and in this case I was talking about like breaks out of the crowd and leaves the cesspool of impure thinking and they become a trophy, but they also become a target. And there's this whole thing about you won't find courageous people in crowds, because courageous people can't live in a crowd, because the crowd reduces you to a man, a woman of unclean lips. And God has called us to purity. And when you live a pure life, people of unclean lips don't want to hang around with you, because your life is making the point you don't have to live like this. When you decide to be a noble woman, a noble man, you living in sexual purity, the crowd don't want to hang around with you, and they want to find something wrong with you, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your righteousness has become a standard that is making them aware that they are unclean. But when everybody is unclean, then it takes away that whole dynamic. Someone hangs around with poor people, often they take on the attitudes. I remember years ago we had one of our pastors who was really an evangelist, and he loved hanging out with the poor. Literally like the underneath the bridge, homeless people. It was so beautiful. But he, after a couple of years, he began to build cases against anybody who had possessions. And I remember sitting with him, we were in a staff meeting, and he was talking about we should do this, and capitalism is evil, and this is, and it was kind of going on like that. And I'm like, So I called my office a couple of weeks later, and I said to him, his name wasn't John. I said, John, the idea of reaching out to the poor and the displaced and the downtrodden is that you bring them the kingdom and kingdom thinking, and not just food. But the deal is that you become like the people you're ministering to. And I don't know if you're any help to someone when you have a poverty mentality and you're working with people who are stuck in poverty. So it's important that we realize that we're often influenced by the people around us. Paul said it this way: do not be deceived, bad company corrupts good morals. So here's my deal. I want you to think about who you hanging out with. It's such a simple message. I don't know why I'm making it so complicated. Who are you hanging out with? Some of us need to ditch our friends and find some new friends. Proverbs says, if you hang out with fools, you'll be a fool. If you hang out with wise people, you'll become wise. There's this whole story, in the year King Uzziah died, Isaiah wrote, I saw the Lord. Uzziah was an amazing king, and yet he had a pretty terrible end to his life. I want to read you what it says about Uzziah in 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verse 3, out of the Message Bible. I really love this, the way it puts it. It says, Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem, and his mother was Jehoah from Jerusalem. He behaved well in the eyes of God, following in the footsteps of his father Amaziah. And he was loyal. He was a loyal seeker of God. He was well trained by his pastor and teacher Zechariah to live in reverent obedience before God. For as long as Zechariah lived, Uzziah lived a godly life, and God prospered him. Here's such a powerful point. Uzziah was one of those amazing kings. He did all kinds of amazing things. I'll read you a few of them. But it says that when Zechariah was pastoring him, he lived a life to God, in obedience to God. But something happened to Uzziah. Zechariah died, yet Zechariah was both a prophet and a priest. He died, and when Uzziah lost connection to a holy man, he himself became polluted, he became embittered, and most pronounced, the greatest struggle, his greatest struggle was with arrogance. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, and two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either one of them falls, the one will lift up his companion, but woe to the one who falls when there's not another to lift him up. This is that finding connections with people who will lift you up, who will be there in your time of trouble. But let me say this, who will also tell you, dude, you are off track. Hey, chick, what are you doing? Like, whoa, I'd watch out for that attitude. It's like we don't just need people who will agree with us. We need people who will tell us the truth. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23 says, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promises faithful. Listen to this. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds. Look at this. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembly together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day drawing near. There's this word right here, I love this, but stimulating one another to love and good deeds. The word stimulate means to provoke with sharp disagreement. I love this word. It's like, he says, consider how to stimulate one another, like to provoke with sharp disagreement, or to stimulate someone to good deeds. Is like, we need people around us. Don't forsake the assembling together. Consider how to stimulate one another with love. And this whole thing of finding people in our lives who will be a bug in our butt, so to speak, who will be a bee in our bonnet, who will like chase us back into good deeds and say, you got, man, that's stinking thinking. That you are not, where'd you get that attitude? And to stimulate, to stand with a disagreement, sharp disagreement, to stand in sharp disagreement against us when we've gotten off the path. Man, we need people like that. So Uzziah lost Zechariah, his friend and his pastor. And now it goes on to say in 2 Chronicles chapter 26 that Uzziah built all this really amazing stuff. He conquered all these enemies. And it says, verse 13, under their direction, there was an elite army of 307,500 people who could wage war with great power to help the king against all enemies. Moreover, Uzziah prepared for all the army shields, spears, helmets, body armor, bows, and sling stones. In Jerusalem, he made engines of war invented by skillful men to be on the towers and on the corners of
for the purpose of shooting arrows and great stones. Hence his fame spread afar, for he was marvelously helped until he was very strong. And so here's this commentary on Uzziah, who was famous for, if you will, Old Testament, of course, destroying the enemies of the Lord, building strong towers and war machines. And then verse 16 says this. That was verse 15 I read last. It says, verse 16, when he became strong, his heart was so proud that he acted corruptly, and he was unfaithful to the Lord his God. And he entered the temple of the Lord to burn incense to the altar of incense. And when Uzziah the priest entered after him, and with him 80 priests of the Lord, who were valiant men, they opposed Uzziah the king, and said to him, it's not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to the Lord, for the priest, the sons of Aaron, are consecrated to burn incense. Get out of the sanctuary. You've been unfaithful. You have dishonored the Lord. And Uzziah, with the censer in his hand, bringing incense, was enraged at them. And while he was enraged with the priests, leprosy broke out on his forehead. And there's this whole terrible story about Uzziah. And he's a man, he's a king. He's a man of great honor for the Lord. He's famous. He's a war machine. He's fortified his country. He's purified his country. And yet when Zechariah dies, he takes a turn. His arrogance grows. And he decides, not only am I a king, but I'm a priest. And he goes into the temple and beginning to, offer, sacrifices to God, something in those days only the priest can do. And if you will, he gets out of his lane and he starts thinking, well, I can do anything. I'm the king. I'm like, you can't tell me what to do. And he ends up being leprous. And the Bible goes on to say that he lived, King Uzziah was a leper to the day of death. And he lived in a separate house, being a leper. And he was cut off from the house of the Lord. And he ended up dying as a leper king. Oh gosh, there's so much to say. Success is such a dangerous place for us to live. Let me say that again. Success is such a dangerous place for us to live. Pride can make you believe that you know more than everyone else around you. And if you don't have friends who will pull you up short, who will mirror back to you that your attitude sucks, that your arrogance has taken over your good judgment, you're in big trouble. Learning how to be under authority in our culture is a big deal. We've talked about it before, but we live in a culture where you can have, a million followers on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, all these new platforms, and you can look like you are a king, you are a queen, when really you're a midget because you actually haven't grown. You actually aren't mature. You actually don't make good decisions. And you can start believing the rhetoric of the people you've gathered around you because they don't actually know you. Proverbs 27:21 has been a verse that I've actually taken as a model for my life. It says, the crucible is for silver, the furnace is for gold, and each is tested by the praise accorded to him. Let me say it again. The crucible is for silver, the furnace is for gold, but each person is tested by the praise accorded him. This is powerful because it kind of puts it's a setting for what Abraham Lincoln said. He said, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. There's something about favor. Uzziah lost Zechariah. He was a righteous, godly king, named among the kings that were good kings, until he lost his pastor and his friend. And then he became arrogant. He became a leper. He didn't pass the test of favor well. 1 Corinthians 11 is an interesting verse. Verse 18, it says this. Paul's talking to the Corinthians. He said, in the first place, when you come together as a church, I hear that there are divisions that exist among you, and in part I believe it. For there must be factions among you, so that those who are approved may become evident. There must be factions among you, for those who are approved to become evident. He actually, Paul here talks about trials and division. And he says, listen, I hear there's divisions among you. He goes, I don't like it, but it's necessary because it shows the people who are really approved, the people who are humble, the people who stay connected, the people who stay under authority, the people who, if you will, they watch over their mouth, their heart, their attitude. They stay low. They forgive. Paul says this division that's in your church, your local church here, Corinthians, it's actually good for you because the people who are walking with God will stand out. They'll stand out because they remain godly in the midst of a trial. I just want to end with this idea. All of us go through stuff. I want to really encourage you. This message is super simple. It's like, I forget who said it. Show me your friends and I'll show you your destiny. Are you picking your friends wisely? Do your friends have permission to tell you the truth? When somebody tells you the truth and it's not what you want to hear, do you punish them by either defending yourself or removing yourself from the relationship? Like when somebody tells you something you don't like, do you suddenly disappear for a month and you just make a great big statement with your body language? Hey, don't tell me the truth. I can't handle it. I can't tell you how many times over the years people would say, I'd love to have your counsel. And they sit with me and they tell me their issue and I'm like, this is what I would do, or this is what I think the problem is. And they're offended. I'm like, oh, you weren't looking for my counsel. You were looking for my encouragement. I think encouragement is super important. I said before, we have to find people around us that will throw, everybody carries a can of water and a can of gasoline with them. And you want to find people that throw the gasoline on the fire of our passion, and we got to throw the water on our fire of our fears. I believe that. But there are people in our lives that we have to have people in our lives that will actually tell us the truth, like Uzziah and Zechariah. We have to have the Zechariahs in our life who can pastor us, can shepherd us, and can actually mirror back, whoa, that attitude right there is not helping you. It is actually inviting demonic spirits. And I'll finish with this thought. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, actually it's end of chapter 4, he said, I think it might be chapter 5 now that I think of it. He said, don't let the sun go down in your anger. He said, don't give the devil a place. This is huge to me, that keeping short, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Keeping short accounts with forgiveness. Being someone who forgives quickly. Allowing people to speak into our lives without being offended. When we don't do that, we open the door for the devil and we end up inviting the demonic spirits into our life. And out of that comes bitterness, arrogance, pride, all kinds of unforgiveness. And I want to encourage you today. I want you to inventory your friends and ask yourself, do I actually have a righteous friend who, if I do something like bad, off color, that I'd be a little nervous to invite my friend to that because they would not agree with that. And have I invited my righteous friend to actually have a place in my life to speak into my life? I want to leave you with that, and I want to pray, Lord, I just pray that you would give us wisdom and insight into how to pick our friends and how to give people access to our life. God bless you in Jesus' name. Bye now.
day.